What is up, my friends? Welcome to another week of Revolution on YouTube. That's right, you're here with me. Hey, you guys. What's up? I'm Brad, middle school pastor here at Westridge, and I'm so glad that you're here with us again tonight. We have got not only an amazing night planned and a really cool teaching, but we have got our first Revolution of November tonight. And I'm excited about that for a few reasons. One, because it's finally starting to feel a little chilly. You gotta wear a sweatshirt and it feels nice. I love it. And you can practically smell Christmas right around the corner. That might be because I just sprayed some pine scent right over here. But it also might be because Christmas is literally 8 weeks away. And I'm very excited about that. So, before we get to Christmas, of course, we have a stop at Thanksgiving, which is also a fun holiday. So we are in the holiday season officially. So happy holidays, everyone. It's going to be a good time. Now, wanted to remind you of a couple things that we're going to jump into part number 6 of our Glory series, which is going to be a doozy tonight. But this is the very last night, November the 3rd, that you can get registered for our Orlando mission trip. That's right, tonight is the deadline, so make sure you get registered. Get on westridge.com/Orlando to get registered, to find out all the information you need. You just need $50 for a deposit to get signed up, and then you can raise the rest of your support. It is $520 for the entire week, and we will be gone February the 19th through the 25th of 2022. And it's going to be an amazing trip. We're going to serve the entire week. We're going to do all kinds of different things to put Jesus on display. And so I want to make sure you don't miss that opportunity and are able to come with us. So Orlando, Florida, come with us. Winter break, westridge.com/Orlando. Now, this week in particular, we're going to be jumping into a specific story in our Glory series that I just love. It's powerful, it's amazing, and it's a lot of verses. So just prep yourself and get ready. And before we jump in, let's check out the series bumper. Check it. So, the glory of God. We've been talking about it for 5 weeks. We've talked about it from different angles and different viewpoints and different perspectives. We've talked about different things within the glory of God and what it all means. But what we haven't talked about is this particular story we're going to talk about tonight. And it comes from John chapter 11. So if you got a Bible, you can go ahead and turn it to there, because that's where we're going to be. And we're going to look at 44 verses tonight. That's right, 44. And we're going to read them all. And so we're going to do it a little bit different than we've done in the past. Typically, we have just a few verses and we kind of talk about those. And there's different things kind of wrapped around that. But we're going to actually read the entire story tonight from John 11 that is about this guy named Lazarus. And he and his sisters are friends of Jesus, and so Jesus knows them. And so we're going to talk about the glory of God through the perspective of this story. But before we do, again, I like to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about when we say glory. It's another way of saying the greatness of God that he has earned through what he's done, because of the great beauty that is God. He is great, he is beautiful, he is marvelous, he is majestic, he is amazing, he is powerful, he's all these things. Therefore, he has glory. He has the glory, and his glory is something that we can see and experience, and is something that really can help us understand him more when we see it and experience it. And so tonight's story, we are going to experience God's glory in a different way than we have in some of the other stories. But it again points to the same thing, which is how amazing and how good and how great our God is. So, John chapter 11, the verses are going to pop up. We're going to pause. We're going to talk about them as we go along because this is, again, 44 verses that we're going to be reading through tonight. So it's one big story. And we start where all of the stories start, in the beginning. So John 11 chapter 1, or John 11 verse 1. And it says this, "Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and his sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair." Let's pause right there. Now, I don't know if you've read this story or heard this story before, but there's another story of which Jesus has perfume poured on his feet, and then his feet are wiped with her hair, and it's perfume and her tears and everything, and it's all on his feet and anointed by this woman, and this woman is the Mary in this story, the sister of Lazarus. So, again, already connected to Jesus, already knows Jesus. Let's keep reading in verse 3. "So the sisters sent word to Jesus, 'Lord, the one you love is sick,'" talking about Lazarus. "When he heard this, Jesus said, 'The sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it.'" Now let's pause right there. So we already see Jesus telling us the end of this story. He hears about the one he loves, Lazarus, a friend of his, is sick. And he says this is not going to end in death, but in fact, this is going to reveal God's glory. That's what's going to happen through this. So no death and God's glory. Those two things are going to be the end kind of game of this story. That's what's going to happen here at the end. So he keeps going, verse 5. It says, "Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, 'Let us go back to Judea.'" Pause. Okay, so he loves Martha and her sister and Lazarus, so the 2 sisters and the brother. He loves them all. And then it follows that up with, when he heard Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. Now, it seems kind of odd that when you hear someone you love is sick and you could do something about it, that you would stay where you are for 2 more days, right? But this is what Jesus does. And it kind of makes a little bit more sense when you remember what he just said about how this is going to be for God's glory and it will not end in death. So Jesus is not worried, he's not concerned, because he already knows how the story is going to end, because he just said it. But it's still, from our perspective, kind of weird, right? It's kind of odd. Typically, you hear someone that you love is sick, and you can go and help and do something, then you go. Like you immediately go there. Now, another reason why maybe they didn't immediately go kind of comes into play with these next few verses. Let's check it out. It says, "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you are going back." Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by the world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light." After he had said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." So let's pause right there. So apparently there have been threats, and this has happened a few times, where Jesus is threatened in cities and towns that he goes to because of the things that he says and does. It's threatening the religious people of the day, specifically the Jewish people, and they have threatened him. They have threatened imprisonment, punishment, stoning is what's mentioned here, which is where you literally get stones thrown at you, and not like little pebbles. I'm talking like big stones, things that can hurt you, maim you, potentially kill you. So it's a big deal. And so the disciples are kind of like, whoa, hey, wait a second. But Jesus isn't really concerned with that. He is actually saying, I'm glad I'm not there. And again, this is where maybe why he is going slower than we thought, which is going to confirm what he said earlier. He's telling the disciples, listen, Lazarus is asleep, and I'm going to wake him up. And the disciples thought that meant he's literally sleeping. Like when you get sick and you're like all sleepy and you take a bunch of naps and you sleep throughout the day just to feel better. His disciples are like, hey, that's good if he's sleeping. This is going to help him feel better. But Jesus is like, I don't mean he's literally sleeping, guys. I mean he's dead, okay? Lazarus is dead, and I'm going to wake him up. So the disciples weren't getting it. Jesus laid it out plainly. He's dead. I'm going to go raise him back to life. But I'm glad I wasn't there when he died, is what he says, because this, I hope, will help you believe. Like he's wanting them to see him raise Lazarus from the dead to help them, to grow them, to strengthen their faith and understand more of who Jesus is by seeing his glory, by seeing his greatness. And this is what Jesus had just said when he first heard about Lazarus, right? So this all matches up and makes sense. And so he says, hey, we're going there. And the disciples are like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, we're going there. Here's why, and we're going. So let's pick it up. Verse 16, then Thomas, also known as Didymus, cool name if you ever have kids one day, Didymus, put it on the list, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. So let's pause right there for a second. A lot kind of happened right there, right? Jesus gets there to the town where Lazarus is and discovers he's been in the tomb for 4 days. So Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. And then Martha comes out to meet Jesus, but Mary doesn't. Now, we'll just leave it there, okay? Martha comes out to meet Jesus and they start talking, and she immediately kind of is frustrated, it seems like, like, hey, Jesus, had you been here, our brother might, have lived. He wouldn't have died because you could have done something about this. You could have changed this. And what is Jesus's immediate response to her? Your brother will rise again. And so he's literally saying he's going to rise again. Not going to stay dead. It's all good, Martha. It's okay. And then she proceeds to be like, yeah, I know he's going to rise again. I know all of us who believe in you will on that day, because when we know and trust you, then we will all be raised to walk and live and resurrected. But then Jesus says, because she was talking about like the last day, like the day of judgment in which everybody's raised back to life. And so she knows about this, and this is what she's talking about. But then Jesus says, no, I'm the resurrection and the life. Like he is. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. And so Jesus is trying to help her get the same way he tried to help his disciples get before they got there, that Lazarus is going to live now. Like this is about to happen now. And so she goes on to say, yeah, I believe that, you are the Messiah. Like you're the Son of God. That when we believe in you, that we will live. And so she's with it. She's down for it. But I still don't know, based off of this, that she really understood what Jesus was saying as far as Lazarus is about to be alive again. So we keep reading, verse 28. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. All right, so Martha goes back after meeting with Jesus and talks to her sister, says, hey, Jesus is here. Martha, after saying this, Mary immediately gets up and heads out to go meet Jesus. The people that are there with her, comforting her, think she's going to go to her brother's tomb and cry and mourn and remember her brother and be sad and that kind of stuff. And instead she goes to meet Jesus. And she gets there, and immediately, the same way Martha did, she says, Jesus, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. So both these sisters know who Jesus is. They know how great he is. They believe that he can bring life, can heal people, can do miracles because they've seen it, they've experienced it, and they have real faith in Jesus. But as Jesus sees Mary and hears her say this to him and sees all these other people that are sad and mourning the loss of Lazarus, it says Jesus is troubled and moved. His spirit is troubled and moved. Now, he already knows Lazarus is dead, right? He's been dead for 4 days, and Jesus knows everything, but it's already confirmed that we know this, and he knows this, that Jesus knew he'd been dead for 4 days. So it wasn't that was troubling him. The thing that moved him was the sadness of Mary and her friends that were with her. Jesus sees this and not only knows that she's sad, but feels and understands her sadness to the point that it moves him, it troubles him. And so I love knowing that Jesus not only sees our pain, but he feels it. He understands it. And it moves him. So it's not just something that he knows and is callous to and is cold to. Jesus understands. So let's keep reading. It says in verse 34, where have you laid him? Talking about Lazarus. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, so see how we loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind men have kept this man from dying? Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days. So Jesus again, he asks where he was laid, and then they go and show him, and Jesus weeps as they go and show him where he's laid, and they're acknowledging how much Jesus loved Lazarus and how much he's been moved by this whole situation. And then they started saying, couldn't Jesus have done something? I mean, this is the guy that has made people who are blind see again. And so the same questions that Mary and Martha are asking, these other people are asking the same things. Jesus, if you'd have been here, this could have been different. Because we know you can do things. We know you are powerful. We know you can do miracles. But in their mourning, they ask why, In their sadness, they ask why. And one of the things that I've seen and I've experienced in my life is that when we're sad and when we mourn, this is one of the biggest questions we have is why? Why didn't you do something here, God? Why didn't this turn out differently? Why wasn't there a miracle here? Why is a huge part of our mourning process. It's a huge part of when we experience sadness and loss. And I love knowing that Jesus is right there in the midst of those whys. And he's walking with us, and he's crying with us in the midst of those things. He doesn't leave. He doesn't look at us and think we're idiots for asking why, or how can't you see why, or why would you even question me? He doesn't do any of that. He weeps with us. He walks with us, and he enters into it with us. But in this story, this is not where it ends. So he's asked where he is laid, and he's told them to roll away the stone that is in front of the tomb. And Martha says, hey, Jesus, he's been in there for 4 days. Like, when something's dead for 4 days, it's not going to smell good. Like, this is going to not be good. And so this is where we pick up the story. In verse 40, it says, then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Jesus doesn't just walk through our pain and our suffering and our sorrow. He enters into it. And through it all, he brings life. And specifically in this story, he speaks to a man who is dead. He's been dead for 4 days. And he tells him to come out of his tomb. Now, he says all of this after praying a prayer to God that he acknowledges in the prayer is not for him, and it's not even for Lazarus. It's for the people that are there witnessing what's happening. That they would see what's about to happen, and that they would believe, and they would have faith in Jesus, knowing that he is the one who leads to life. And so as he calls Lazarus out, what happens? But the thing that he said would happen in the very beginning, right? This will not end in death, but this is going to end with God's glory being seen. And how is it seen? It's seen by Lazarus walking out of the tomb that he'd been put in 4 days before. And so he tells the people, take off all the burial stuff because this man's alive. And so everyone gets to see this and experience this that's there with them. And so in the midst of their sadness, Jesus brings life. He brings joy. He brings hope. He brings happiness. And what's crazy about this story is that this is our story, right? We're all dead in our sin. Every one of us. We've all messed up. We've all fallen short. We've all done things that God has called us to not do. Things that don't lead to life. Things that hurt. Things that harm. Things that kill us spiritually and ultimately separate us from him. And so Jesus enters into this death that we find ourselves in. And he brings life. He brings restoration. He brings redemption. He brings righteousness. And he brings resurrection. And so the same way he called out Lazarus, and we get to see his glory, his greatness in what he just did in Lazarus' life, we get the opportunity to experience in our own lives. We get to answer the call to come out of the tomb by answering the call of Jesus, by accepting and believing. The same thing he told to Mary and Martha and the others who were mourning. If you believe in me, then you will experience life and you will see the glory of God. So our prayer and our hope is that we would see the glory of God through the resurrecting power of Jesus in our own life. That he would be the one that we get to experience and know because we believe in Jesus. We trust in him. And he brings us back to life. He forgives our sin. He has taken care of the penalty of it. He's taking care of all of the things that go along with sin including death. And he offers us life, and he offers us forgiveness. And he allows us to now be fully alive and to know him again. And so that opportunity and that option is there for each and every one of us to confess with our mouth and believe in our heart that Jesus is Lord, and that God raised him from the dead, and that we would be saved. And so that can be something that you do right in your own room, wherever you are watching this on YouTube. It can be done anywhere, anytime. God is always available, and he's always listening, and he's always there, and he always answers when someone calls out to be saved by believing in Jesus. And so whatever you want to do, however you want to do that in your own words, just a simple prayer between you and God of confessing your need for Jesus, your belief that he forgives you and that you can find life in him, and that you want that, you desire that, and that instead of sin, you take Jesus and his forgiveness and his gift of life, and that you want to pursue and know him the rest of your life. That whatever that looks like and however you say that to him, that is that moment in which you take that first step into life. The same way Lazarus takes his step out of the tomb, that is your step out of the tomb and into new life. And it's offered to each and every one of us. And so if you do that and have done that or are doing that right now, I just want to celebrate with you, man. Lady, girl, whoever you are, like, this is the most important decision, the best thing you could possibly do with your life, is to decide to know and follow Jesus, to accept that gift that he offers. And so now, fully alive, you get the opportunity to work that out and live in that life and learn more and more what that is and what it's about and how you can experience it. And so if that's you, I just want to encourage you to let us know. You can shoot me a note at bradc@westridge.com, or you can go online and let us know through our connection card at westridge.com. Another way you can do it is by actually texting 770-222-2125, and then text the word follow to that number. And then that'll let us know that you accepted Jesus and you want to follow him. And you are following him now after accepting him as your Savior. So, God's glory is seen in each and every one of us the same way that we see God's glory through the story of Lazarus. The dead being brought to life. When we see each other living in the forgiveness and in the love of Jesus, then we get to see the greatness of God. And so it's an opportunity for us to help others see the glory of God in us as we live in the belief and in the faith of following Jesus, knowing him for who he really is. And then others will have the same opportunity to help people see the glory of God and how they follow Jesus and how they know Jesus. And so our goal together as Revolution, the middle school students and leaders at Westridge Church, is to continue to live in this greatness, this glory that is Jesus, that we get to follow him, and in his salvation, in the resurrection that we get through him, that God's glory would be on display in our lives, and that we would experience his glory through that gift of forgiveness. So that's my prayer for you. That's my prayer for me, that we just continue to live in it, that if we haven't accepted it, we'd accept it tonight, and that as we walk in it and follow after him, that like he prayed with those people around the tomb, that people, as they see us living in the life that we find in Jesus, that they would be encouraged and their faith would grow and they would come to know Jesus. And if they already know Jesus, they would be encouraged to walk even further and farther with him. And so I want to pray that for you. I want to pray that for me, that as we continue to experience God's glory through salvation, that it would encourage us and everyone around us to know and follow after Jesus with everything they've got. So let's pray together. God, we love you. Thank you so much for this amazing story of how you brought death to life in this story of Lazarus, and how you feel our pain, you understand our pain. You don't just know about it from afar and acknowledge it or maybe not even acknowledge it, God. You do know about it. You feel it. You experience it, and it moves you. But God, you speak to it. You speak to the sorrow and the sadness that we experience in our life, and you offer us love. You offer us forgiveness. You offer us life. And so, God, through salvation, through belief in Jesus, I pray that all of us would get to experience your glory, that other people would experience your glory through us living in that resurrected life, and that all of us collectively together would be putting Jesus on display in every single day of our life as we continue to walk and follow after you. So, God, we love you. Thank you so much for forgiving us. Thank you for bringing us to life the same way you brought Lazarus to life, and for the glory that is revealed in that. You are great. You are good. You are amazing, God. And so we pray that you would continue to get all the glory for our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I love you guys. I hope you guys know you're loved. Hope you have an amazing week. We'll be back here next Wednesday night for the last part of our Glory series. So until then, have a great week. Get signed up for Orlando, Florida, and we'll see you next week. Bye.